Good evening, everyone, and this is Cody Bowles, and I'm reporting on my Chapter 15 assignment Part 2 over negotiations for ED 854, and looking at a couple different questions based on negotiations and some tactics that are used. The first one of which we were to answer says, what are some of the major issues that are negotiated at the bargaining table between the Board of Education and the Teachers Union? And when looking at this, when it comes to negotiations, I know that a lot of times, in talking to a lot of different teachers, it becomes sometimes heated. It becomes very stressful when it comes to bargaining. And based on West Point, we're about every 2 years when we go to those negotiations for various things that the local union takes to the Board of Education. But there are some general issues that the text Lunenburg and Ornstein went through. Several. I think going to look at basically 4 different ones I feel are maybe more prevalent than others when it comes to some of the negotiations and what I've talked with some other fellow teachers about. Number one of which is management rights. I think anytime negotiations are occurring, this is one of the more major ones. Which basically it is an effort for the employer, the school, to maintain management of anyone below or dealing with the school themselves, and it's really an effort to clarify all those rights. So basically, the employer negotiates the right to supervise all operations to make sure the day-to-day operations are going as needed and smoothly as possible, to control any type of property, hire and fire or move up or down in different employees. And overall just maintain an orderly operation. So I think that's one of the biggest things that is negotiated between Board of Education and the Teachers Union. Number two, and this has obviously become much more prevalent in the last, I'd say, 10 years here, especially in Nebraska, is reduction in force, or RIF. And a lot of times any of these smaller schools around the state are obviously experiencing this more because of inability to keep their doors open. And anymore, this becomes more of an issue to make sure they negotiate how are they going to handle reduction in force. And so basically they have to negotiate some form of a provision to establish seniority, so that way those teachers that have been established longest are going to stay around. They're going to still be employed with the school, whereas other teachers that have obviously not been around as long in their area may be let go, which is obviously very unfortunate. But also, they can negotiate that some of those teachers can be bumped from one area and may go teach in another. So that's something that the teachers union has to negotiate with the Board of Education and establish those parameters for how that's going to look. A few years ago, when West Point Public Schools was in contact with and what we thought would be a merger with Scribner Schneider Schools, that was one of the major things that our union was talking about, was the RIF process, because of the concern about bringing all teachers over. So that is, can be very much a heated topic, and seeing that, firsthand when that was going down, or what we thought did, it actually never came to me. But that, I know that would have been a very, very controversial. So I think that's a major one that the teachers union has to really establish and make sure they negotiate something with that. The third one, and as Lunenburg and Ornstein pointed out too, the majority of negotiations that go on between the Board of Education and the Teachers Union is going to be basically wage and other benefits. That's basically the biggest things when it comes to employees of the school. So a lot of times the Teachers Union will negotiate and discuss increase in wages, which a lot of times coincides with the cost of living expenses and different things in the school and around the school. Also, there are fringe benefits, which may include insurance programs, health, life insurance, sick leave, personal days, any paid religious holidays. Those types of things are going to be negotiated more often than not. And speaking a lot of times with those individuals that represent our local union, those are things you hear about the most. What's going to happen to our bump in pay, if any, what's going to happen to personal leave, different things of that nature that we hear the most. And others that kind of come up in negotiations between the Board of Education Teachers Union would be the evaluation process. I know teacher evaluations, the state is in kind of flux with how they're going to evaluate teachers. That's always one that is brought up a lot when it comes to negotiations. They need to approve the proper teacher evaluation so everyone's on the same page, all about being evaluated the same. Also the school calendar, which may not get so much time on, and that may be more of a calendar committee type thing, but it can be brought up in regards to days off or in-service dates, those types of things. And also class sizes, making sure we're looking at, how is our teacher to student ratio. A lot of times that's brought up in those negotiations as well. So, those four things and some other things underneath them are really probably what I feel the most, prevalent or most important things that are brought up. Like I said, Lunenburg and Ornstein bring up a handful of things there as well, but I feel those are the most important negotiations that occur. The second part of what we were to look at is some of the new bargaining approaches. Lunenburg and Ornstein kind of go through some initial tactics that have been going on here for quite some time, which included counter proposals, which basically is, anytime there's something put on the table, you're going to make a counter offer to that. That's very popular, has been. Making a trade-off of some type, which basically means that, okay, we'll accept this if you're willing to, go back on this, this, and this, which is very popular. Also, maybe a caucus, which is basically an established, group having a meeting with different proposals, and then obviously another one is costing proposals. There's someone going on for a long time. Now, we were asked to look at some of the things that happened over the past 10 years. There are a couple, major ones that have become a lot, more popular when it comes to ways to negotiate. And one of them, as they went into, is what's called new unionism, which basically is an effort to connect more teacher participation to the educational outcomes. And that's all in an effort to really try to get everyone on the same page. I think a lot of times it feels as if, even in education, it shouldn't be this way. But it seems like it's kind of us against them, teachers against the Board of Education, when it shouldn't, because, as I think all of us would agree, if we're all on the same page in education, we should all be, thinking what's best for kids. But sometimes it doesn't turn out to be that way, and that's sometimes how negotiations feel. I think the new unionism really tries to eliminate that, tries to get on the same page. It also tries to focus more on educational improvement. What are those things that we really, really need to improve on overall in education? What are facilities, anything that material-wise, anything that we need to really, really improve our school? That's what this is trying to emphasize. And overall, it's really trying to focus on the problems, not the people. We want to make sure that we're focusing on the problems at hand. What are things that we need to solve within the school, not the people themselves, and not trying to make it us against them, as, like I said, it typically feels like. So over the last 10 years or so, that's become very popular. And I know at West Point, this is something that I know the new unionism, trying to get teachers involved, has become pretty important for our local union here. A second one is called collaborative bargaining, which really focuses on ongoing problem solving, making sure that we're just bringing something towards the end of the year and then it gets put on the back burner. Basically, it's so both sides continually keep up to date with issues, so that way we're not letting things just pile up over a period of time. So typically, joint committees deal with the problems. Both parties try to establish ground rules, time limits for when they're going to solve things, also trust agreements, different things of that nature. And it's basically all in an effort to establish collaboration, really focusing on problem solving of mutual issues throughout the whole school year. That way things aren't brought towards the end or just at one time of the year, and it feels very overwhelming for both sides when it comes to negotiations. So the new unionism, the collective bargaining are two really major tactics that have been much more used in the last 10 years when it comes to focusing on bargaining between the teachers union and the Board of Education. So looking at that, all these things together, anytime we're negotiating wages, benefits, whatever it may be, as I know other teachers and other people in the class would agree, it really should always come down to what's best for the students, and that's what we always have to keep in mind in education, no matter for teachers, administrators. That's the biggest thing. So that's just what I have for Chapter 15. I wish everyone have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great break, and we'll talk to all of you very soon.